Hello my friends, and welcome to this next video in this series where we shall be looking at functions in JavaScript. So in previous videos, we've looked at strings, numbers, boolean, undefined, and we've even talked a bit about null. And all these data types are under the primitive data type. Under the non-primitive data types, or the reference data type, we have objects, arrays, and functions. In this video, let's take a look at functions. In JavaScript, a function is a set of statements that perform a particular task or calculate a particular value, and it can be used throughout your code again and again. So, functions are useful for just putting a block of code together, and then you want to run that block of code multiple times. So this allows you to run the same code multiple times without having to type those codes over and over again. That means JavaScript functions help us to avoid repetitions. Now, let us try to understand the usefulness of a function. Now, just assume that I'm a chef or a cook and I make breakfast every day. I make the same kind of breakfast every day from Monday to Friday. Now let me show you the steps that I take to make my breakfast. So let me say something like console.log, boil some water. So right here, this is the first step I take in making my breakfast. The second one is I make some tea. So I'm going to console log, make some tea. Now the next thing I do is to make some bread toast. So I'm going to console log, make some bread toast. And the last thing I do is to serve the breakfast. So I'm going to console log serve the breakfast. So these right here are the steps that I use in making my breakfast every day from Monday to Friday. I'm going to leave a comment up here that describes what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to say making breakfast. This right here is a comment. And a comment is used to describe something that a code is doing, and it does not get executed by the browser or by JavaScript in general. So it's just to describe what you're doing, and whenever you see it as a programmer, you remember what you're trying to do in your code. So it just used to leave a piece of message or information inside of your JavaScript file. Now I'm going to save this file, and then I'm going to see what gets logged onto the console in my browser. But before I do that, I want to go to my home.html file. Remember, my scripting.js file has been linked down here. So we have access to this scripting.js file in the browser whenever we open home.html. From the beginning of the video, I said whenever we want to open this home.html file, or we want to open our file on the browser, we come to this place and then right click if you're using a Windows, and then click on copy path. For Mac users, you can just press Ctrl on your keyboard and then click so you can copy path. But this is not actually a good way of opening up our HTML page on the browser. A better way to do that is using what we call server. So server just helps us to serve up our web page on the browser, and we see it in real time. And anytime we make changes to our file, whether the HTML file or the JS file, that is the JavaScript file, it automatically updates on the browser since we're using a server. Now, to use a server, we can come to this place that says extension and search for an extension that says live server, like so, developed by Ritwik Day. So I'm going to click on here, and then I'm going to click on install. I've already installed the live server, so that's why I'm saying uninstall right here. But if you don't have live server already installed in your VS Code, then you're going to see install right here. So you can just click that install and it will install. After installation, when you come to this place, to the far right corner here, you're going to see open live server. I already have the live server open, so that is why it's saying click to close the server. Let me actually click to close the server. So now my server is closed. So you're going to see something that says go live. And as soon as you click on go live, it takes you to your browser. So that's a better way of opening up your HTML page on the browser. Instead of copying the path and copying it to the browser, this is a much more better way to do it. I'm going to close off this place or minimize, and then I'm going to click on go live, and then I'll be sent to the browser. So you can see right here is the browser, and it says I'm learning JavaScript. The exact same thing we have on our HTML file. So I'm going to open up the console right here, and you can see the process of making breakfast have all been logged to the console. Boil some water, make some tea, make some bread toast, serve the breakfast. Down here, live reload enabled is just a function of that server that we installed on VS Code. So it's just saying that as soon as we save our HTML file or JavaScript file, the changes will quickly be effected right here. So we don't need to refresh our browser to see those changes, which is cool. So back to our VS Code and to our scripting.js file, you can see that all these things got logged onto the console. Let me close this off. All right. So now, what if on Tuesday I want to make breakfast? Remember, this making breakfast is for Monday. And in fact, let me add to the comment that says making breakfast for Monday. What if I want to make breakfast for Tuesday? It's still the same breakfast, right? I'll come down here and I'm going to give a comment. Remember, comments don't get executed by JavaScript. So I'm going to say making breakfast for Tuesday. And then below, I'm going to make breakfast. So I'm going to still say console.log, boil some water, and then console.log, make some tea. And then I'm going to console.log, make some bread toast. And then I'm going to console.log, serve the breakfast. Now, this is for Tuesday, right? What if on Wednesday, I want to make breakfast for Wednesday? Now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to give a comment so you know what I'm doing. So I'm going to say making breakfast for Wednesday. And then I'm going to come down here and give the same console.log, boil some water, console.log, make some tea, and all of that. So in fact, I can copy all this code right here, copy, and then I'm going to paste them right here. So I have the same thing here. Now, if I want to make for Thursday, the same thing. So you can already see that I'm repeating myself over and over and over again, which is not a good thing in programming. In programming, there is a principle that says dry, which is do not repeat yourself. So you can see right here, I'm running the same code over and over again. So this is what function can help us to do. A function can help us to group this code together, and we just run the function anytime we want to make breakfast. So instead of this, let me come down here and write a function. So down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a function, and to write a function, you use the function keyword. But before I introduce that function, let's actually save our file and preview on the browser to see all of those console logs. Right here is our Safari browser, and you can see everything has been logged onto the console. So we have boil some water, make some tea, make some bread toast, serve the breakfast. We have it here again, boil some water. So all of them have been logged to the console. Now, back to our VS Code, let's talk about functions. So in our VS Code right here, to write a function, you use the function keyword. So the function keyword is written like this, function, and then you give the name of a function. And it is always a good practice to give a name that is useful, a name based on what you want to do with your function. In this case, I just want to make breakfast, right? So I can say function make breakfast. So this is the name of my function, and then I'm going to open a parenthesis, and after the parenthesis, I'm going to give curly braces like this. This is a function declaration right here, and this right here is the function block. So whatever is inside of this curly braces is what we want this function to do. So remember, I want the function to make breakfast, right? So what I'm going to do is right inside of here, I'm going to write all those things that I want the function to do. So I'm going to say console.log, boil some water, console.log make some tea, and then console.log make some bread toast, and then finally console.log serve the breakfast. And that's it. So right now I'm going to delete all of these things that I have here, and since this is a function, I can give a comment right here and I can say function to make breakfast. So this is what my function is doing. Remember again that comments do not get executed by our JavaScript. So this right here is what is going to be executed by this function. Now let's save and try to see if these things get logged onto the console. Let's go to our browser's console. Oh, right here is our browser's console, but nothing has been logged onto this console. Why is that? Let's get back to our VS Code to find out why. Right here is our VS Code. We've already declared this function right here. Right here is a function declaration, and then we've told the function to do all of these things. But then we did not see any of this console.log on the console. Why is that? And that's because we have not yet called or tried to use the function. So that means after you declared your function and given it the job that it's supposed to do, you're supposed to call the function wherever you want it to execute. So for example, I want it to execute on this line. So I'm going to call the function right here, make some breakfast, and put the parentheses. So by doing this right here, I'm calling this function. And by calling the function, I mean I want the function to now execute. So as soon as I save this and view our browser's console, we're going to see all of this logged onto the console. Let's get to the browser's console and find out. So right here is our browser's console, and you can see they've all been logged to the console. And in fact, what I'm going to do again is to pull my VS Code with my browser side by side so that we can see the effect of the changes that we make. So right here is my VS Code, and right here is my browser. And these are the statements logged onto the console. Now, what if I want to make breakfast on Tuesday? Because this one is for Monday, right? So let me even give a comment that says make breakfast for Monday. Now, what if I want to make breakfast for Tuesday? All I need to do is come down here. Let me give the comment first of all, make breakfast for Tuesday. And I come down here and I'm going to click on make breakfast. So I'm calling the function again for Tuesday, right? So let me save. And then as soon as I save, you see that we make another breakfast here for Tuesday. What if I want to make the breakfast for Wednesday? I come here and say make breakfast for Wednesday, and I call the function again. As soon as I save, we have another breakfast logged onto the console. So this is how we can create a function, and then we can call the function or use the function by making this kind of statement right here. Now, let's look at more interesting way of using a function. I'm going to move all of this code away. Now, let's assume that we want to calculate the area of rectangles. We know that the area of rectangle is length times width. So let's say that a given rectangle has a length of, let length equals 10, and then let the width equals 20. Now, to calculate the area of a rectangle that has a length of 10 and a width of 20, we're going to say that let area equals length multiplied by width, like this. So this is going to give us the area, but this is for a particular rectangle. So let's say this is for rectangle 1. Let me give a comment that says rectangle 1. What about we have another rectangle, rectangle 2, that has a different length and width. So let's say let length 1 equals 12, let width 1 equals 14. Now, to get the area of this rectangle 2, we're going to say let area 1 equals length 1 multiplied by width 1, like this. So this gives the area of the rectangle 2, and this right here gives the area of rectangle 1. Now let's console log this area and see what the values are. So console.log area and console.log area 1. So as soon as I save this, now we have that the area of rectangle 1 right here is 200, and the area of rectangle 2 is 168. Now, what if we have many other rectangles to calculate? That would be tedious, right? Because we have to get the length and the width, and then we have to calculate the area and then console log the area. So that would be tedious. Now we can use a function to do this. So to use a function, I'm going to declare a function down here that says function, remember to use the keyword, and then I'm going to give a name of the function, a name that suggests what the function does. So I'm going to say area rectangle, like so. You can use any name that you want, but let it be descriptive enough. So I'm going to introduce the parentheses and then the curly braces like this. So instead of here, I'm going to get the length of a rectangle, the width of a rectangle, and then calculate the area of that rectangle and log it to the console. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say let length. In fact, let me comment all of these ones so it doesn't disturb our code. I'm going to put a comment so they don't run. Okay. I'm going to say let length equals 10 and let width equals 20, like this, and then let area equals length multiplied by width. So I'm finally going to log it to the console. So console.log area, like so. So we've written a function to do the same thing. Let's call the function area rectangle, like so, and put the parentheses. If we were to call this function right here, it's going to create a variable and assign 10 to it, the variable of length, which is the length of the rectangle. It's going to also get the width and assign 20 to the width, and then it's going to calculate the area based on the length and the width and log it to the console. So let's run this function and see. So let me save my file, and I get all of these values. Why am I getting a lot of these values here? That means some of my codes are still running here. So let me take them away and save one more time. So as soon as I save, I get 200 logged onto the console. That means the area of this rectangle with length of 10 and width of 20 is 200. But what if I want to calculate for another rectangle that has a different length and a different width? That means I'll have to come here, right, and change the length. Let's say the length is 15 and the width is 25, for example. And then I have to save, and then I get 375 as the area logged onto the console. So this is one way we can do it. But then a more useful way is to actually pass that length and width here when we're calling the function, and with that value we're going to calculate the area. So what do I mean? I'm going to delete this one right here, and then inside of this parenthesis of my function, I'm going to introduce a length and a width variable. Right here, what I'm doing is introducing a length variable, although I'm not using the let keyword to put this variable right here. And the width, I'm also not using the let keyword to put the width variable. So this is just a way of doing it. This is just a syntax. So, but what we're doing here is to declare a variable called length and declare a variable called width and give it to the function. We do these declarations without using the let keyword. The function is going to understand what we're trying to do. So what happens now is that when we're now trying to call this function on line 11 right here, we're not going to pass the length instead of the parenthesis and the width instead of the parenthesis. So if the length of the rectangle that I'm trying to calculate is 10, for example, I say 10, comma, and if the width is 12, for example, I'm going to say 12. So what happens is that when we are trying to call the function, JavaScript will now look at the function and say, okay, first of all, length is going to be 10, because remember, 10 is on the left side and length is on the left side. And then it looks at the 12 and says, okay, the width is going to be 12, so it makes width to be 12. So now when it's trying to calculate the area, or when we create this area variable, the value will now be length multiplied by width, which is 10 multiplied by 12, which will give us 120. So when we log this to the console, we're going to get 120. Now let me save this file and see what we get. So right here on our console, we get 120. But that's for this rectangle right here. A rectangle having the length of 10 and a width of 12. So in JavaScript, when we write this variable like this inside of a function, that is this length and the width right here, we call these things parameters. They are called parameters. And when we are passing the value for those parameters, they are called arguments. This right here are arguments. This right here, the length and the width, are called parameters. So JavaScript is going to, at the time we call this function, it's going to make the length to be 10 and it's going to make the width to be 12. And then it calculates the area of the rectangle using the function. Now, what if we want to calculate the area of a rectangle with different value for length and width? We're just going to say area rectangle and then open our parentheses. So what is the length of the rectangle that we want to calculate? The length is assumed to be 20, and then let's say the width is 14. So we want the area of a rectangle whose length is 20 and whose width is 14. So let me save this, and we see that the area of that rectangle is 280 right here. So this, my friends, are simple ways that we can declare a function right here and use it to do something. So at this point, I want you to take a pause in the video and write a function that calculates the area of a triangle. And after that, you can come back, click on play, and see the solution to this problem. All right, now, my friends, let's calculate the area of a triangle. So I'm going to clear my codes right here, and I'm going to use a function to do that. So I'm going to say function area triangle, introduce my parentheses and my curly braces right here. So what's the area of a triangle? The area of a triangle is half base times height. That is half base multiplied by the height. So it means that we need the values for base and height. So I'm going to give parameters right here for the base and then the height right here. So now the area of a triangle, we say let area equals half base times height. Half is nothing but 0.5. So I'm going to say 0.5 multiplied by base and multiplied by height, like this. So this gives the area of a triangle. And then lastly, I'm going to log it to the console. Console.log area. So now I'm going to call the function and give it the value for the base and value for the height. So how do I call this function, or how do I use the function? I'm going to say area triangle and then give the value for the base, and you can give the value for any base that you want. So I'm going to say 16 for the base, comma, and for the height I'm going to say 12. So now let's see the area of this triangle. I'm going to save my scripting.js file, and then we can see that the area of this triangle is 96. So that, my friends, is function in JavaScript. We're still going to look at a more complex way of writing function and some other things about functions. See you in the next video. Please, my friends, like my videos and subscribe to my channel. It will go a long way in helping me to create videos like this.